What it do, man? It's your boy Battle Truth coming to you live and direct from the Battle Truth headquarters. Let's get right off into this, man. So the URL and Norb's attorneys them faced off once again in the court system this Wednesday. URL had petitioned for it filed a motion for the judge to dismiss the 16 accounts against them that Norbs and his attorneys them filed. Now, as a result of that, after court was over, the URL took to Twitter and they put this up. Due to scheduling conflicts, we are moving the Ultimate Madness selection weekend. Stay tuned with us in Caffeine for further developments and details. Read the bottom one first because that's the first one that was released. Okay? Then immediately after they released that, they doubled back and wrote this. Due to scheduling conflicts, we are moving the Ultimate Madness selection weekend. Stay tuned for developments and details and giant caps. Thank you, URL staff. What's the difference in those two tweets that came back to back? As you can see, the one at the bottom merged Caffeine and URL together. Let's read it again. Look what it say. Due to scheduling conflicts, we, meaning URL and Caffeine, are moving the Ultimate Madness selection weekend. They moving it. Now, Ultimate Madness was on Caffeine. So the URL saying they moving it. But look what it says. Stay tuned with us and Caffeine for further developments and details. Then up top, the same tweet come right after that. Due to scheduling conflicts, we moving the Ultimate Madness selection weekend. Stay tuned for developments and details. Thank you. URL staff. This time Caffeine is not mentioned, which raised a lot of speculations. But let me give y'all some insight on what I believe happened. Wednesday, when they went to court, Caffeine lawyers was also present for the first time. Caffeine lawyers was present at the same time. Not to be a representative to speak during these court procedures, but was sitting in as a spectator to see the seriousness and nature of this $40 million lawsuit. So Caffeine sent their lawyers who was listening in during the court proceedings, after which they reported back to Caffeine, letting them know how serious the nature of this case is, since Caffeine would be one of the character people in this case when it comes to Norb's them lawyers and the URL. They're going to play a big part in this case. A big part in this case. So after Caffeine lawyers were listening to what was going on in court and reported back to Caffeine, telling them the serious nature of this case, Caffeine now is in some type of, I'm not going to say panic, but they're a little concerned and worried because they would be subpoenaed. They would be subpoenaed and have to show their documents and open up their books to the courts on behalf of this lawsuit. So when URL put this tweet up and mentioned Caffeine, I believe somebody from the Caffeine staff was like, no, remove our name from that. We looking into some things, and it appears they trying to distance themselves in some type of degree or another. Because if you notice, pay attention to what Now said Up top, when URL take caffeine name out, look at the very last wording at the bottom. Let's read the last sentence. It says, stay tuned for developments and details. Thank you, URL staff. No longer mention caffeine. But purposely in the first tweet, it purposely made it their business to add caffeine in it. And this was done right after court. Is this a reach? Is this a reach? I don't think it is. Because if you look at that last sentence, when it say thank you, URL staff, and big bold letter, it wanted to clearly now say this is just the URL and not caffeine. Notice it's only did closing out to address URL staff. Everything else is just in small caps. You see that? So that was deliberately, purposely done. I believe caffeine don't want to take these risks, and it's bad for business. And why I believe this case will be settled. This case will not go to trial. This case will be settled because it's not worth caffeine. Like, it ain't worth it. Especially now we got to get involved. They're not liking that. Because now what happens is we got to open up our books and we got to reveal our paperwork. We got to reveal our partnerships with other people, which could be bad for us in business now, because now this thing could be a domino effect. And now our investors and people that's with us, they may be fear of getting looked into by the IRS and them too. And this ain't good for business. This ain't good for business. And why I believe they're going to apply the pressure on the URL to settle. To settle. Because if you take this to trial and this thing begin to open up and they finding out all type of tax fraud and money that can't be spoken for, that don't have the paperwork to back it up and all these things like this, it ain't worth it. It ain't worth it. So they best bet is to settle, that this case could be thrown out and none of the dirty things come out on it that could add more hurt, that could do more hurt than good. You better off just settling so it can be swept under the rug. Because all these other companies get to looking into, and they people get to looking into, and you never know the history and the people they dealing with, and they investors that's backing them and everything. Don't want none of that government investigation. None of it. And why I believe this ain't good for business. And as a result of that, I think Caffeine looking at this like, man, this ain't worth it. We could do something else. So it definitely got something going on right here. That right there is so obvious. That right there is so obvious, and it makes perfectly good sense. So this ain't going to trial. This ain't going to trial. URL can't afford to take this to trial. Sad thing about it, they hurt themselves, man, being greedy. When they tried to just dismiss the man and didn't give him anything, like none at all. When you could have just offered him something and everything would have been good. Now you're going to have to pay 10 times more than what he would have normally accepted in the beginning if you would have just been fair. Now they got to pay even more. So I don't know, man. What y'all think, man? What y'all think? Because I doubt if the Caffeine want to open up their books to the government, that all they financial backers and things like that will be up under investigation. I highly doubt that. I highly doubt if they want to do that. But it is what it is. It's your boy Battle Truth. It ain't my judgment. That's some question. It's yours. Hit the link in the description box. Subscribe to Battle Truth. Join my Patreon if you ain't a member of my Patreon. Caffeine is not liking this lawsuit. And I believe the URL have no other choice but to settle.